Welcome to the NWI.com Political Roundtable for Thursday, November 10th. I'm Robert Blaszkiewicz, Assistant Managing Editor of The Times, and we've got our full crew here today. Doug Ross, Editorial Page Editor of The Times, and Mark Kiesling, Times columnist. A lot to talk about today, so let's jump right in with the results of the 2011 elections from Tuesday.
Well, what I thought was interesting was that there were 13 incumbents who were knocked out in various races, and you know, in I guess 12 different communities. Porter knocked out 2 of them, but Porter is a town that likes to bounce political control back and forth, so there's not a lot of stability there.
Same thing is true, I think, in Highland and Griffith. Those towns are very unpredictable as far as how they're going to go party-wise. They don't seem to have the party identity that, say, Munster has a Republican identity, Hammond has a Democratic identity.
So
they seem to be a little more.
Well, overall, what do you think this means going into next year?
I think people are going to wait and see what kind of job that is done by the people they put into office, and perhaps base some of their decisions next year on what the newly elected people, be they incumbents or be they newcomers, what kind of job they do. Next year's election could be a referendum of sorts on what kind of job these people do.
What I thought was interesting was the high number of, or at least high to me, number of straight party tickets. Porter County, for instance, it was, as I recall, 26%, which is a pretty, huge percentage. So,
I think you tend to see that more in a municipal election. These were, we had strictly municipal elections this time, and with the addition of a referendum sprinkled in here and there. But by and large, these were municipal elections, and I think people tend to identify a ticket with what they want.
Because they don't know the individual candidates, perhaps.
It was also relative to the relatively low turnout overall, so that you have, the thought is you probably have your political partisans, your hardcore Democrats, your hardcore Republicans who are going to turn out no matter what. The average voter who is kind of in the middle probably stayed home.
Right, and I haven't crunched the numbers to know, in what communities was turnout higher than in others, and I'm sure there must have been some of that. What do you think of? There were some decisive mayoral races. Hammond, for instance.
Well, I think there were some. Yeah, your larger cities in Northlake County. I think you saw Hammond having a very decisive mayoral contest between 2 opponents who ran against each other last time and were very close in the polling. I think the Republican candidate, George Janik, who almost came very close to knocking off incumbent Mayor Tom McDermott last time, and who was pretty soundly trounced this time. I think he had a couple of things going against him. One was what I kind of like to call the Jethro Bodine syndrome. If you remember the Beverly Hillbillies, Jethro was the kind of dim-witted nephew who couldn't make up his mind whether he wanted to be a brain surgeon or a fry cook. Well, I mean, Janik hadn't made up his mind whether he wanted to stay on the school board, to which he was elected last year, or become the mayor. And people are really tired. I think people are really becoming disillusioned and tired with office jumping. I think that was part of the problem there. Karen Freeman Wilson ran away with it in Gary, but then
but then it's Gary.
But then it's Gary. Most people in Gary vote Democratic.
Yeah.
And the Republican challenger was, he was virtually inconsequential. Interesting, I think, was the election in East Chicago, where Anthony Copeland got his first victory. He was named as mayor, so to replace George Pabay, who was indicted and convicted. but this was his, this was a test of whether or not he was going, he could keep it in his own right. And not only did he do it, but he did it pretty decisively by about it was by about a 4-1 margin.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, it had all the makings of a mandate, something that will empower his efforts at reform and going forward.
And one of the things I mentioned in my column for tomorrow is that with all the attention being given to Karen Freeman Wilson as being the first black female mayor in Indiana, is the fact that Anthony Copeland is the first African American mayor ever in East Chicago, and that got kind of lost in the shuffle. So I brought that out in my column.
Yeah.
Right.
The one incumbent mayor that lost, Olga Velasquez in Portage.
That was one that I thought was going to be hard to call.
Yeah,
it was.
It did go down to the wire. Talking to our Portage reporter Joyce Russell yesterday, I was talking to her, and one observation she made was that 4 years ago, this was a rematch between her and Jim Schneider,
right.
who's now the mayor-elect. But 4 years ago, Olga Velasquez had many firefighters, many police officers at her headquarters. This year, none, which speaks to kind of the real issue that 911 consolidation was in the city, at least for those city workers. The other observation that the mayor made was the problems that she had in the precincts that were around that Stone Avenue project. A lot of upset residents there. And then the other factor that might have factored in, one of Mayor Velasquez's her base is senior citizens. She's always been an advocate for seniors.
Right.
The weather, the rain, may have kept some of those seniors away.
Right, and what I think you hit on. What the real answer was that the Republican Jim Schneider was able to get the city employees behind him, and in municipal elections, man, that's who drives the results.
Well, that's right, because city employees are going to be. You talk about your hardcore voters. These are people whose jobs depend on who becomes mayor.
Right.
Either their jobs or their chances at promotion. Let's say.
So they're gonna go out and vote. they're gonna ask their nephew to vote for Uncle Lenny or whoever, and by golly, they're gonna drive it.
Well, any predictions for 2012?
Well, some of the races are shaping up. We've talked quite a bit over time about the Senate race, which has, of course, Joe Donnelly is running as a Democrat, probably as the Democrat, and there's a Libertarian in it now, Rupert, who is
Survivor.
Exactly,
the guy with the beard,
he's the tie-dye guy. Yeah, everybody knows Rupert.
Sure.
And so he's going to bring some levity to the debates, I'll bet. And
which we could all desperately use.
We could, especially after a long slog through this election, and we're already starting. People are announcing. I wrote a list here of some of the things we already know about 2012. Ron Johnson, for instance, announcing in House District 19, the Shelley Vandenberg's district. We've got in the Lake County Commissioner's race, we've got Jerry Shube running against Roy Dominguez. That's going to be a pretty fun one, I think. In Porter County, this is pretty interesting. Jim Biggs, who's a former county commissioner, he's now a county councilman, is talking about running for commissioner in John Evans's district, North County. And the council president, Dan Whitten, who pretty much drove the bus on the attempt to pull out of the RDA.
Yes.
He is now talking about running for commissioner in South Porter County. That'd be Carol Knobloch's district. So that's shaping up to be a fun one. So there are a number of others, but yeah, there's a lot of good things coming up.
Moving on to the Sheriff's Department, we talked a lot last week. That was primarily what we discussed last week was the ongoing, the report, the audit of the Sheriff's Department. I don't know if there's any new developments there, but also wanted to talk about a story that's come up with a healthcare contract involving the current sheriff.
That I thought was pretty interesting because here's a a guy who, Sheriff Bunsich has a guy who has been working, with the jail to, improve the quality of care, and we know the Department of Justice wants more nurses there and so forth. And so here's this consultant who has formed a company as of Halloween, and now it looks like he's being led down the aisle to get married to the new contract.
Yeah.
So
Quicker than a Kardashian marriage.
exactly.
So-
Now whether
And will it
the
last
divorce
as long?
goes faster, we'll see. But that does not look good.
Yeah.
It's not the open bidding it needs.
Yeah, Mark, anything new on the front with the former sheriff's administration?
There's nothing new with the State Board of Accounts audit. I think we pretty
Yeah.
thoroughly covered that ground. An internal audit has had the current sheriff's department looking into the possibility that there's more than $100,000 unaccounted for in the environmental task force. The Lake County Sheriff's Department gets a certain amount of money from various sources to fund an environmental task force. They have an enforcement officer, and a couple of the officers from one of the contributors, the Lake County Solid Waste Management District, have supposedly been to Bonsich's office, kind of asking him, "Gee, do you know where this money is?" The program shut down in 2008, and as of today, that money is not accounted for. It may be there. It may just be a case of poor accounting, which seems to plague Lake County. You can't help but think that some of the poor accounting is done on purpose, so you don't have to account for where the money went. I don't know. So we just have bad accounting procedures. It's like the Gary City Clerk's office, not the current one, but I don't know how the current one functions. But I know when I had to use the city clerk's office, they used to file case files not by the number, but by the last time they were in court. So unless you knew when the last date they were in court was, you couldn't find it. And you could file all the freedom of information requests you want, but when you've got 10,000 cases sitting there, bad, shoddy bookkeeping or record keeping can go a long ways towards creating a situation in which files can disappear.
Yeah.
That's true.
We will stay tuned to that and all the rest of the developments next week. Thanks for watching this week, and we'll see you with another political roundtable.